Hey guys, what's happening? Hope you're doing well. Thanks for tuning in, coming back, watching, all that stuff. I hope you're staying safe and well and all those kind of things out there. And if you're new here, I'm Jim. I make a lot of videos about editing photos, giving you tips and tricks to help you up your game and have fun with it. And we're having fun today. Today is a lot of fun, in fact. And by today, I mean the entire day I've been sitting here recording videos, because if you happen to notice, same shirt for the last two videos and this one. So this is my third video today that I'm making. It's been a great day. I'm having a lot of fun. I'm doing creative stuff, and when you're at home and you're basically sequestered in your house, you got to find ways to have fun. So one of the ways I have fun is screwing around with my photos, just trying to jack it up and do whatever I can to make something interesting. So that's what this photo editing session today is about, which is I take a photo that I like. It's a nice photo. I'm biased, right? I think it's a nice photo because I took it, but I turned it into sort of a fantasy photo kind of thing. Let me show you. So here it is. It's a longer exposure, like a minute and change, along the river in Salzburg, Austria. I took a few years ago when I was on a trip there. Very gray, overcast conditions, very boring. And I thought, I was kind of playing with it. I was doing some monochrome kind of stuff because I thought it was fun. And then I was like, I'm going to do something totally different. I'm just going to make this look different, maybe believable. That maybe's in air quotes because I don't know if you'll believe what I did to it, but theoretically believable in terms of what I'm doing to it. Let me shut up and show you. So here's the original photo, and that's my believable edit. It's a Fantasyscape. That's what I like to call these things. I'm taking stuff that doesn't exist and I'm making it exist. And as you can imagine and probably tell, and by probably I mean absolutely, you can tell that I'm taking advantage of the new feature in Luminar 4, which is AI Augmented Sky. So let me reset everything that I did, walk you through what I did, and maybe give you some ideas and tips and tricks to inspire you to try this on your own. Okay, here we are now. I'm on the base layer in the Essentials tab, and I've got the light tool. You can see what I've done. There's the before, and there's the after. If you want to take a look, smart contrast, I bumped it up fairly significantly and took down the highlights fairly significantly. Nothing in the advanced settings, and that was really it. That was my base starting point, if you will. And 9.5 times out of 10, I start with the light tool. The odd instance when I don't, I generally go here to AI Enhance and use that first, but that's kind of rare. In this photo, I went ahead and did that a little bit as well. And I had the photo like this, and this is when I said, I kind of want to do something different. Let me check out Augmented Sky because it's kind of fun and interesting. So I jumped over to the Creative tab, and I grabbed Mountains 3, which to me, I don't know what mountain range that is. Some of you may recognize it, but it looks very European to me. And since there are mountains and those kind of landscapes in Austria, which is where I shot this, even though they don't sit behind the town of Salzburg, I thought, it's kind of believable. I mean, there's theoretically a European town with a river next to it with some mountains. There's probably dozens of them. And it's my mission to go find them. I love Europe. Anyway, so I stuck Mountains 3 on there, and I did a little bit of mask refinement just because of the blending of the edges. It actually does a really good job, but I helped it out just a little bit there, and that was really it for getting the sky on. And so then I went from my base photo to that, and this is when I was like, okay, what am I gonna do? How am I gonna make this look a little bit better? Because the top and the mountains are very blue and the rest of it is very not blue, right? More orangey and green, yellow kind of green. So this is when I decided to do it black and white. So this is what I often do. And in fact, I recommend doing things like this first. If you're gonna augment the sky or do a sky replacement, I generally go and do those first, or really close to having done the stuff in the light tool and the AI accent, which I did first in this photo, but I'll generally do Augmented Sky and Sky Replacement first and then go do other stuff, or just those two tools here on Essentials and then do the augmentation or the Sky Replacement, simply because I don't want to totally adjust all the light here until I kind of know what my overall photo is going to look like. So sometimes I'll do this, go change the sky or augment it, and then come back and do some more enhancement here. It depends on the photo, but just experiment and see what works best for you. Just a little tip for you. The next thing I did is I went over to AI structure, and I bumped that up about 47. I just given the whole thing a little bit of punch. I feel like I'm not trying to blur out the mountains, which you can do in the Augmented Sky. I want them to be pretty crisp. To me, they add to the photo. That's why I put them in. but I wanted to make it look a little bit crunchier, so a little bit of AI structure across the photo, and I did mask it in. So let me show you that with the brush, and you can see kind of where I did that, right? I don't ever get it exact everywhere. You can come back and, you know, repaint more if you want to, that sort of thing, but I mostly just wanted to crunch up that center of the photo, leave the sky and the water as smooth as possible. This is when I went to black and white conversion, and let me turn that on. And at this point, I was like, okay, black and white is definitely the look that I want here. I just want to, I felt like there was a lot of color in the other one. Let me show you again. There's a lot of color here, and I love color, as you know, but I also like black and white a lot, and I just felt like, especially those mountains, I mean, they have some blue in them, but there's not a lot of blue in the rest of the photo, and I just felt like matching them up was going to be a hassle, and honestly, it's, to me, more dramatic as a black and white, so I converted to black and white. I had this base image, and then as you can see, I took the blue luminance down, so let me reset that. That's what it did look like, and then when I took that luminance down, that brought back a lot more definition and detail in that mountain range because it was so blue. Now, you may also notice I'm getting some artifacts in these upper corners, and that's because this is just a small JPEG. I didn't take the raw file. I wouldn't normally have that. I just wanted to point out that I am aware of it, and it's just because I've got a JPEG and I'm kind of jacking with it pretty heavily here. Didn't do anything on saturation, but black and white conversion helped me get to the next phase, if you will, of my photo. From there, I popped up here to color, and in the color, I went into advanced settings, and I went into the yellow, and I took the luminance up on the yellow, which is basically brightening some of these buildings. And then on the green, I took the luminance down, which is darkening the grass. So if I turn that off, you can see there's the before, and there's the after. All I'm doing, it's almost like dodging and burning. I'm just creating a little bit of contrast because I'm changing the luminance or lightness, brightness values of specific colors. So I'm basically trying to brighten the yellowy oranges, and I'm darkening the greens. And since they're next to each other, I'm just creating a little bit more contrast there. Because I've got a lighter river, I've now got this darker section of green with these trees kind of in there, and then this other stuff around them that's a little bit lighter. Again, just creating contrast, which for me makes for a bit more dramatic monochrome photo. Okay, after that, I popped over to the portrait tab. I used a little bit of Orton, well, 56, maybe not a little bit, but a fair amount of Orton. I love the look that it provides. I mean, it's on the portrait tab and it works great on portraits, but to me, it's like a landscape or cityscape tool that I use all the time. It creates nice shadow. It increases some contrast, adds a little bit of a soft kind of glow, not to be confused with the glow filter, but it adds a little bit of moodiness and romantic look to it. I don't know how to describe it, but I love it. I think it looks great there, so I added that. And then I popped over here to the Pro tab, the last one, and used some adjustable gradient. This was basically increasing the contrast at different levels for the top and the bottom of the photo. You can see I'm on bottom now. I did contrast of about 14, and for top I did contrast of about 41. Let me show you the before. A little bit flatter, and after, a little bit more pop, especially in the mountains, because I went higher contrast in the top, which is going to be the mountains. They're going to stand out a little bit more from that background, which I think adds a little bit more drama to the image as well. Okay, at this point I was finished with this layer, and I feel like we've come a long way. There's the base photo, and there's the current photo. I think these mountains fit really well. Again, I'm not trying to sell it as real. I think they're far enough back. Some of you may disagree, totally fine. I think they're far enough back, but it looks as though I've shot it with a zoom lens, so I'm getting that compression, which makes distant objects look closer. But I think in reality, if they were really there, they're far enough back that you would not be getting a reflection of those mountains in the water. If you disagree, that's totally fine, but I chose not to reflect them. I also like the river being smooth and uninterrupted like that, so I didn't want to reflect them. But if you wanted to, you just have to go get that image and then flip it and mask it into the river. I've done that in previous videos. I can do that in a future video, but that's why I didn't do that. I just wanted to point that out. Next up, I went and got an adjustment layer. And the first thing I did is I went into the light tool, as you can see here. And what I did is I went into advanced settings, and I just did a gentle S-curve here on the tone curve in the light tool. So let me show you. Let me turn that off. So here it is before. You can see a little bit less contrasty, and after, a bit more pop. It's really brightening up those white parts and darkening those dark parts, which is really what I'm trying to do. Creating it's contrast. That's really all it is. light tool was the first thing I did, and I think it's, again, creating a little bit more drama and creating a bit more contrast, which I think adds to the photo. Then one more time, I went to AI Enhance, and here I went 35, and I just bumped that across the entire image. And you can see what that's done. Here's the before and the after. Brightened up a little bit of those darker shadows that are occurring because the enhanced contrast that I did on the previous filter. And then I went to AI Structure, and I went completely negative and gave it a little bit of boost, and then I just painted it into the water and the sky. Let me show you. There it is. I already had the Show Mask button clicked. So there you go. You can see where I masked that in. All I did is just smooth things out. The water was already fairly smooth because it was more than a minute long exposure, but I wanted to smooth it a little bit further. And also smoothing the sky took out some of those artifacts that I was talking about from having used a JPEG in this image. Okay, so at this point, I was pretty happy with the photo. Once more, there's my starting point, and here's my current point. And what I decided was I want to do a little bit more customization. And so I went back to the layers panel, and I added a stamped layer. All you do is you say plus and create new stamped layer. And when I did that, I was able to, it opens up a new stamped layer. And what that does, as I talked about in this video where I talked about the Augmented Sky tool, that allows me to go back in here and use another element in the Augmented Sky. So I was able to come in here, and I got birds 3, and then I just shrank it and place them up here right there. You can see them right there. I just added the birds there. I wanted a little something more in the sky, and I experimented with some of the planets and moons and stuff, but they didn't really fit the image overall. And they also, because they're really light in color or in tone, they're not showing up very well on basically a white sky. So it didn't really work in that regard. It would need to be a darker, more contrasty object. The birds worked really well, and I think actually added to the composition. Also, I like how the mountains here make a little bit of a V, and then these birds are a little bit in a V shape as well, and I kind of stuck them in there. I felt like the shape of that flock of birds complemented the shape of the V there in this fantasy landscape that I'm making up and having fun with. So that was what I did here on the stamped layer. I just basically went and did that so I could get another instance of Augmented Sky. And then the last thing I did, in fact, I was done. I sat on this for a little while, and then I was like, well, God, it looks like a winter scene. Why don't I just seal the deal and make it a full winter scene? So I went in and got a snow overlay and stuck it on top. Now, that's what it looks like finished. Let me show you what it looks like normally. And this is something I want to point out. That's what the snow overlay looks like. Disregard that. I'll explain that in a second. But basically, it's little drops of snow on a completely black background. So what you do is you drop that in, and then you change the blend mode to screen, and it gets rid of the black background. The reason I wanted to mention that is because that's basically how Augmented Sky works. You have a black background and you have an object, and it's automatically doing that for you. It's effectively, from what I can tell, I'm no scientist, I didn't write the software, but it seems to me like that's what they're doing. They're basically creating these image files on a black background and then setting it up to screen mode automatically. So when you add an Augmented Sky object, it's taking care of that for you. That's why I wanted to point it out, but I did that there. The reason why you saw that little hole over here is because basically one of these snows like that one or that one that are bigger was right on top of that, and I didn't like the look of it, so I just went into Edit Mask and got the brush, and I got the eraser like that, and then I just went in there and erased it from that little spot because I didn't like it there. It was distracting to my eye, kind of like that there. Maybe you could do that as well if you wanted to, but it really bothered me on top of that dome. It just looked out of place. So I went ahead and dropped that snow overlay in, erased it from in front of that dome, changed it to screen mode so that it would drop in appropriately, and then I was set. Now the other thing you can do is if you want to change the opacity, you could take this down just to make that snow a little less obvious. I left it at 100. It didn't really bother me, but if it bothers you, you can do that. And one other thing I totally forgot to talk about was I cropped the photo. It was shot with my Sony camera, which is a 3:2 aspect ratio. I cropped it to 16:9 and pulled it in a little bit from that left side just to get rid of some of what I consider the distracting elements over there. And that also allowed me to get the river to do a little bit more of a full left to right kind of flow. So there's my before fantasy landscape, Jim Goes Crazy, and there's my after. We're talking about Augmented Sky with the mountains, Augmented Sky again on a stamped layer to get the birds, another image layer, which was the snow, and copious amounts of edits on the base layer and the adjustment layer. And that was how I got there. So hopefully that gives you some ideas. Let me do the sliding thing just because that's kind of fun. I mean, God, look at that. It's so different. But that's the beauty of software. And since we're all stuck at home, go make something up. Like, make it up. Who cares? Just create a fantasy land. Let me show you one more photo. Let me get out of this photo. I did this again. Let me find it. Golly, where is it? I think it's over here. Yeah, here it is. So here's another image, another example of what I did. This is basically a Stonehenge replica that's in the hill country in Texas, like 2 hours from Austin. Years ago, I was out there and I had my camera and I knew that was out there, so I went and found it. It was like on some farmland, but it was open to the public. Anyway, I went and found this Stonehenge replica and I went and took a photo of it. It was a bright blue sunny day. I did very similar things, same mountain range here, which was an augmented sky. I put a new sky in it. I did another augmented sky with the same birds. I did the snow overlay, a different snow texture, but the same idea. I even made the ground white to look like it was snowing. So that's my base photo. That is Stonehenge replica that's somewhere in the Texas Hill Country. And that's what it looked like, and that's what I turned it into using very similar techniques. I'll show you the snow thing. I went into the light tool, and I basically bumped up the exposure and then used a gradient mask to drag it into the bottom of the photo. And then what else did I use? I used glow. Same thing. I soft focus bright, added it to the bottom of the photo, used a gradient mask to drag it up there. And basically those two moves allowed me to convert this snow from, it was just a black and white version of that, to that where it looks like there's some accumulation of that fluffy white snow on the ground. That was my intent there. So that's another example of a fantasy landscape, Fantasyscape, whatever you want to call it. But the point is, just go have fun. Make something, create it, get creative, just do whatever you want. It's exciting, it's fun. We have these amazing tools at hand, and they're really fun to play with. So I hope that you're having a good time with it. Hope these two photos in this video has given you some ideas, things you can experiment with at home. And most importantly, take care of yourselves, my friend. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it very much. I'll be back soon with more videos in my isolation editing challenge. By all means, if you create something like this, tag me in it and let me know that you posted it. I'd love to check it out and appreciate all the interaction. You guys take care. I'll see you soon. Have a great day and adios.